following is a presentation of the Reviewing Network Sports. The 2014 offseason began with the Steelers seeing Lamar Woodley, Larry Furt, Levi and Curtis Brown, Al Woods, David Johnson, Ziggy Hood, Emmanuel Sanders, Jericho Cotchery, and Jonathan Dwyer all leaving the team. Free agency was certainly a lot better this time around than it was in 2013, with Mike Mitchell, Lance Moore, Arthur Moats, Bryce McCain, Darius Haywood-Bay, and LeGarrette Blount joining the team to help bolster the roster and get them back on track. The draft was also vastly improved as well, with Ryan Shazier being their first overall pick, with Stephon Tuitt, Martavis Bryant, and Daniel McCullers proving to be successes in the long run. The 2014 season started the way the last season ended for the Steelers, facing the Cleveland Browns at Heinz Field in what would be their last home opener in Week 1 until 2023. Unlike the last 3 years, though, the Steelers came out swinging and never looked back, dominating the Browns 27-17 by the end of the third quarter. And although the Browns did put an effort to get back into it, tying it at 27, the Steelers were able to get into field goal range at the tail end of the game for Sean Sweeson to kick the game-winning field goal 30-27, giving the Steelers their first opening week win since 2011, which was then followed by a 26-6 drubbing to the Baltimore Ravens, just like in 2011. The following week, they played the Carolina Panthers in North Carolina to great success, winning 37-19 and bringing them to 2-1. And then came the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Pittsburgh, and thus comes yet another example of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers underplaying to the competition. The Bucs were the worst team in the 2014 season, but they came ready to play in this to get their first win of the season. It was uncomfortably close. The Steelers did eventually take the lead 24-17 in the third quarter, but then the Bucs in the final seconds of the game saw Mike Glennon finding Vincent Jackson for the game-winning touchdown, 27-24. The Steelers lost to Mike Glennon. I repeat, the Steelers lost to Mike fucking Glennon. Let that seep in. And don't worry, old Mikey boy isn't done with the Steelers yet. He'll see them again in 2017. But, needless to say, it was an embarrassing loss for the Steelers to put them at 2-2 for a game that they should have easily won. The Steelers were able to vent out their frustrations against Jacksonville the following week, winning 17-9 to improve to 3-2. Only to get humiliated by the Browns the following week, 31-10, to once again fall to last place in the AFC North. Again, kind of like 2007, this was one of those weird times where every team in the AFC North was so close and had winning records. Even the Cleveland Browns had a winning record, and this was before their top draft pick, Johnny Manziel, even took the field. But it was a weird time for the AFC North. The team was a mixed bag to start the season. 1 week they'd win, and then 1 week they'd lose, and it'd be like that for 6 consecutive weeks. And then by week 7, the tide began to turn as they hosted the Texans on Monday Night Football, where at one point, Houston had the upper hand 10-0. But then a 1 minute 36 second stretch where the Texans started with a 13-3 lead, but then the Steelers got going with a 35-yard touchdown pass from Roethlisberger to Martavis Bryant to make it 13-10. Then at 1 minute 10 seconds left, Texans running back Arian Foster fumbled the ball inside the 5, and the Steelers scored immediately as Antonio Brown threw a pass to Lance Moore to give the Steelers a 20-10 lead. If that wasn't enough, with 1 minute and 3 seconds left on the clock, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick threw a pass that somehow landed in the hands of Brett Kiesel, causing another Steelers interception, and they were in business once again. Roethlisberger found LeVeon Bell for a touchdown to make it 24-10, 24 unanswered points in less than 6 minutes. The Texans tried to get back in it, but it was too little too late, and the Steelers won 30-23, moving the Steelers up to 4-3. What followed was a historic 2-week stretch for Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers, starting with a tight contested battle with the Indianapolis Colts. Roethlisberger set franchise records with 522 yards passing and 6 touchdowns while picking up his 100th victory in his 150th start. Roethlisberger's yardage total was the fourth highest in NFL history, and he became the first player in NFL history to go over 500 yards passing twice as the Steelers won consecutive games for the first time this season. The Steelers went on to put a 50-burger on the Colts 51-34 to move them to 5-3. They would follow it up the next week against the Baltimore Ravens, and Ben Roethlisberger putting up yet another dominant performance, which the Steelers were en route to a 43-23 victory and moved them up to 6-3. A week after passing for a franchise record 6 touchdowns against Indianapolis, Roethlisberger duplicated the feat to lead Pittsburgh to its third consecutive win. The 12 touchdown passes over the last 2 games broke the NFL record of 11 set by Tom Flores for Oakland in the AFL in 1963 and matched by New England's Tom Brady in 2007. Coincidentally, the same season when Ben had 5 touchdowns in one quarter against the Ravens that same year. The third time, however, was not the charm as they went to New York to take on the Michael Vick-led Jets, more on him later, and right from the start, it was the Jets dominating with a 17-0 lead and never looked back. The Jets won 20-13, the Steelers dropped to 6-4, and the coach the Steelers trounced the week before was pretty happy about what had happened. The good news for the Steelers is that the next week on a Monday night against the Tennessee Titans, they would get back on track on a night where LeVeon Bell had a banner night, running for 204 yards, an NFL high for a single game so far in 2014. It was also the best game by a Steelers running back since 2010. This was the Steelers' only game outside of the Eastern Time Zone during the 2014 season. Case in point, their game against the Saints the next week at home coming after the bye week. But before that, there was the bad news regarding the Steelers' other running back, LeGarrette Blount, who left the game against the Titans early. It was clear that something was not right with Blount and the Steelers, stemming back to August when Blount and Bell were out cruising in Bell's Camaro with a female passenger, when traffic officer Sean Staffiage pulled over the Camaro operated by Bell around 1:30 p.m., after Staffiage, who was on a motorcycle, noticed a strong odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. He found a 20-gram bag of marijuana inside the car. Bell, Blount, and a female passenger all claimed ownership of the marijuana, according to police. Bell, who was 22 at the time, was taken to a hospital to have blood drawn, and both Blount and Bell were arrested for marijuana possession. In addition, Bell also received a DUI. Blount was released by the Steelers the next day, and within 2 days he was back in New England, and to add insult to injury, won a Super Bowl with them but 9 weeks later. But back with the Steelers. They faced the New Orleans Saints in Pittsburgh to begin December and found themselves in yet another back-and-forth matchup that furthered into a dominant second half for the Saints, and while the score looked close at 35-32, the Saints pretty much dominated that game to send the Steelers to 7-5. The Steelers were able to recover the following week against Cincinnati, although they did have to fight back against the Bengals early on, down 21-17. But a 25-point fourth quarter with another stellar Le'Veon Bell performance, along with Big Ben throwing a 94-yard bomb to rookie Martavis Bryant, gave the Steelers the 42-21 win to move them to 8-5. The winning continued into the next week against the Atlanta Falcons, winning 27-20, then the Kansas City Chiefs 20-12, to not only get them to 10-5, but to clinch their first playoff spot since 2011. But there was still something to play for next week in the finale against the Bengals, a division title. The last game of the 2014 season for the Pittsburgh Steelers was against the Bengals once again, but this time, the winner not only got the division, got a home playoff game, while the loser had to go to Indianapolis next week in the wild card. So a lot was at stake for both franchises. The Steelers dominated for much of the game with a 20-10 lead at the half, but the Bengals did try to make a comeback in the second half, and Le'Veon Bell was taken out of the game with an injury that ended up costing him the rest of the year. However, Antonio Brown did finish the job in the fourth quarter to give the Steelers the comfy 27-17 win. An 11-5 record at home field next week against division rivals the Ravens in the wild card round. The Steelers hosted a playoff game for the first time since the AFC Championship game in 2010 against the Ravens. But despite the home field advantage, the Ravens dominated much of the game and the Steelers could barely do anything. Ben Roethlisberger was sacked 5 times and threw 2 interceptions in the loss, eliminating the Steelers from the playoffs. Baltimore's 13-point victory was the 4th biggest win by a road team in Steelers postseason history. The Steelers fell to 9-1 when facing a team for a 3rd time in the same season since the 1970 merger, 9-2 overall in such situations. The Ravens advanced to the divisional round for the 6th time since 2008. Nevertheless, the Steelers did manage vast improvements compared to the previous 2 seasons. Roethlisberger tied Drew Brees for top passer in 2014 with 4,952 yards. LeVeon Bell finished second in rushing yards with 1,361, and Antonio Brown finished first in receiving yards with 1,698 and tied for second in receiving touchdowns with 13. The Steelers' offense finished second in total yards per game with 411.1 and tied for first in yards per play 6.2 and seventh in points per game 27.2. The defense finished 18th in total yards allowed per game, 27th in passing yards per game, 6th in rushing yards per game, and 18th in points per game. It was getting better for the Steelers after 2 sloppy seasons prior, and the hope was that the improvement could continue into the next season. But again, not without its obstacles.